In the late 1990s, two companies, SEAT and Škoda, both had the same idea. But what was that idea? What exactly do these two companies have in common? For starters, SEAT is a company that has a recent history which in many ways is quite similar to Škoda. Both are owned by the Volkswagen Group, and both produce cars using Volkswagen Group platforms. The companies really do have a lot in common with each other, but the idea they both had at the same time had nothing to do with boring corporate ownership structures, shared platforms, or anything of that nature. What they were doing was far more exciting. But what was this amazing thing they were doing? Of course, it was the decision to go rallying. SEAT as a brand has a history of rallying in the lower classes, although not as extensively as the Škoda. Also, much like Škoda, SEAT competed in the F2 kitcar class during the late 1990s. Their car, the Ibiza kitcar, was highly successful. It won the FIA 2-litre World Rally Cup in 1996, 1997 and 1998. SEAT clearly knew what they were doing in their F2 kit car class. Just like Škoda and Citroen, they wanted their kit car to be the basis for their World Rally car, but there was a problem. The SEAT Ibiza was too small for the WRC regulations, which required that all cars be no shorter than 4,000mm. SEAT needed a bigger car, and luckily for them, they had the perfect option: the Cordoba. The SEAT Cordoba is based on the SEAT Ibiza, but it's the sedan and coupe version. The Cordoba Coupe would be the basis for their new World Rally car. SEAT's lack of experience in WRC meant they mostly used external contractors for their car's design. SEAT set high expectations with their dominance in the 2-litre class. For 1998, they would enter WRC on a part-time basis with the aims of fighting at the front by 2000.
Colin McRae's last two visits to Finland both
After much waiting, the SEAT Cordoba WRC was finally unveiled. It featured a striking bright yellow livery and an enormous rear wing. The car certainly caught many people's eyes. SEAT had realistic expectations for the Rally of Finland. It was the car's first event. This was just to test the car and see what was what. Finland certainly isn't the easiest round to test a brand new car. The jumps are enormous. A car that's fragile will be shattered when it comes back down to earth. The driver lineup that SEAT would use would consist of Harry Rovanperä and Oriol Gomez. This would be the only time that Gomez would drive the car though. The pace was as you'd expect it to be for any car on its first rally. Not particularly good. Rovanperä would be in 13th place after stage 1, with Gomez in 22nd position. Rovanperä would drive the rally conservatively, climbing to 9th by the 5th stage of the rally. 9th would be Harry's highest position for the rest of the rally, as he fell back down the order in the closing stages, eventually coming home to finish in 11th. Meanwhile, Oriol Gomez crashed on stage 20, a rather disappointing end to his career in a World Rally car, which lasted only one rally. Marc Duez would drive the next round in San Remo and Australia, finishing 16th in San Remo and crashing out in Australia. A rather disappointing end to the career in a World Rally car, which only lasted 2 rallies at the top level. One thing that's not disappointing though is this cool new YouTube feature. Take the video out of full screen for a second and check this out. Look at the subscribe button. Isn't that cool? It gets even cooler if you subscribe to the channel as well. Anyway, back to the video. The final round of the season in Great Britain did see Seat's first points though, as Harry Rovanperä finished 6th after Carlos Sainz retired on the final stage. For 1999, Seat would enter the full season. For most rounds, the driver lineup would consist of Harry Rovanperä and Italian one-hit wonder Piero Liatti. Liatti was the winner of the 1997 Rally Monte Carlo, but in 1999, the best he could do was 6th. This did mean that Seat did start the 1999 season with points. Liatti would not drive the next round in Sweden. Instead, a young Marcus Grönholm would drive the Seat. Unfortunately for Seat, fuel contamination would result in Grönholm's retirement from the rally. The team's next points would then come in Kenya, as Harry Rovanperä finished 6th. But things would not go well for Seat after that. Both cars retired in Portugal. Both failed to score in Spain and France. After the Rally of Spain though, a French magazine called Enchappement wanted to write an article about the Seat Cordoba, in which they would test the car. Seat agreed to this, but they had one condition. Whoever they chose to test drive the car had to be a rally driver of some description. Enchappement picked a young driver from the F2 kitcar class. Although he'd recently crashed out at the Rally of Spain in his Citroën Saxo kitcar, he was said to be quite a good driver by the few who had heard of him at the time. His name was Sebastian Loeb, and he'd never driven a World Rally car before. For Loeb, the rest was certainly history, but for Seat, there would not be the same happy ending. The following WRC rounds did not go well for the Spanish manufacturer. Both cars retired in Argentina and Greece. Things were looking absolutely atrocious for Seat. Hopes were not high for the next round.
Evolution. This is the future. Evolution.
The driver lineup would again change for Rally New Zealand. Harry Rovanperä would be driving as usual, but for this round, Piero Liatti would be replaced by Tony Gardemeister on his World Rally Car debut. On stage 1, Harry Rovanperä showed that hope was not yet lost for the Cordoba. He was 4th on the opening test. Gardemeister was 8th. The second stage would see Rovanperä set a much slower time though. He would dropped from 4th to 10th. One of the drivers benefiting from this would be his new teammate, Tony Gardemeister, who had gained a spot and was now into 7th. Still, spectators' eyes were on the leading Fords, Subarus and Mitsubishis. Gardemeister, however, continued to drive a consistent rally as some of the cars around him began to retire. On stage 7, 4th place Colin McRae's Ford decided not to focus. The electronics had gone fishing and his rally was over. The following stage, fellow Brit Richard Burns would take the lead, but only one stage later, the leading Subaru of Richard Burns was not impressing anyone. The gearbox gave up. Combine this with great pace from Tony Gardemeister and you get a Cordoba moving up to 4th place. Tony Gardemeister woke up on the morning of day 2 of the rally knowing he was in 4th place. It was his World Rally Car debut and he was scoring good points. It wasn't a podium, but it was very much literally the next best thing. For the Finn, it was the perfect debut to his long and interesting career in the World Rally Championship. The plan for Gardemeister was to just keep the car on the road. He had good gaps, and 4th would be an amazing finishing position, the best Seat had ever had, in fact. For the first few stages, things went according to plan. But on stage 14, they went even better than the plan. Didier Auriol decided to test how hard the embankments on the side of the road are. He slammed his Toyota into it hard, and as it turns out, the embankments are quite hard too. He lost 3 minutes, handing 3rd spot to Tony Gardemeister. Gardemeister now had even better gaps than before. He knew he just had to drive consistently, but Gardemeister clearly had a point to prove. On stage 18, he set the 2nd fastest time, and again on stage 20, Gardemeister was going for it. But on stage 22, absolutely nothing out of the ordinary happened. Gardemeister continued to hold on to P3, and that would be the position he'd finish in. Tony Gardemeister had just delivered Seat their first overall podium ever in the World Championship, and he did it on his debut in the top class. The following round in Finland saw the introduction of the new SEAT Cordoba WRC Evo 2. The new car had a smaller rear wing and reduced drag at the front, in addition to an update to the styling of the updated Cordoba street car. Both Cordobas would score in Finland, and Rovanperä brought more points in the Rally of China. The Cordobas would fail to impress in San Remo or Australia as well. But in that year's Rally GB, Seat managed to score another podium after plenty of retirements in the final few stages. The 2000 season saw an update to Seat's driver lineup. 1994 World Champion Didier Auriol would drive for the team after Toyota left the World Championship at the end of 1999. He would be joined by Tony Gardemeister. Harry Rovanperä was off to Peugeot. The Evo 2 version of the Cordoba was starting to prove troublesome on the reliability front though. Round 1 in Monte Carlo saw Didier Auriol's engine disintegrate. Engine troubles would then hit Gardemeister in Sweden. Round 3 of the season would be Safari Rally Kenya, and with a Seat Cordoba looking to be about as reliable as a 737 MAX, it wasn't looking good. The open road, long distance rally is a favourite among fans. The rough terrain, local traffic, wildlife, scenery and conditions make the rally always one to watch. I decided to include this specific rally partially because I absolutely love the Safari Rally, but mostly so I can include this absolutely hilarious image of Didier Auriol in a cowboy hat. Even before the first stage, Cowboy's teammate, Tony Gardemeister, would decide to pretend to be a learner driver whilst leaving service. To be fair to Tony, rally cars are notoriously easy to stall. His stall whilst leaving the service park didn't slow him down though. He finished the first stage in 5th position, a minute and a half slower than Carlos Sainz, who was 4th. The battle for 2nd had only a second in it. Burns was 1 second behind Tommy Mäkinen, but the stage winner was Didier Auriol. This seems quite reminiscent of what the Skoda Octavia would do the following year, but Seat had a completely different strategy. Their car was fragile. Auriol wasn't pushing hard, he just wanted to get it to the finish. He was not expecting to win. Skoda, on the other hand, were expecting a stage win on the first stage of the 2001 Safari. It seemed that the Seat had experienced a turn of speed, and not even their drivers could figure out why. The highs of the unexpected stage win would not last for the Seat team. Tony Gardemeister's mid-stage weight reduction did not help his pace, and the competition upped their pace on the next, rougher stage. But the attrition did start rolling in. On stage 3, Mäkinen suspension gave in. On the same stage, Seat had bad news. Tony Gardemeister's co-driver, Paavo Lukanda, had a neck injury from a testing crash earlier on. The rough roads had aggravated this injury, forcing the crew to retire. Meanwhile, Didier Auriol slipped back to third position. The Subarus now with a commanding 1-2 lead in the rally, with a 4-time world champion Juha Kankkunen behind teammate Richard Burns. Day 2 would see Auriol drop another spot on stage 5, behind Colin McRae's Ford after a poor start to the day. Gilles Panizzi in the Peugeot also retired on the 5th stage, and Marcus Grönholm on the 7th. After Grönholm's retirement on stage 7, Freddie Leutz would join him on the list of retirements too. 7 stages in, and both Mitsubishis as well as both Peugeots were out, but the fragile SEAT Cordoba of Didier Auriol was still on the move, in 4th place. In fact, none of those retirements up to stage 7 had any effect on Didier, as they were all behind the 1994 world champion already. But on stage 8, things would change. Colin McRae's focus was unable to go forward anymore. McRae retired, promoting Auriol to 3rd place, but the fragile Cordoba was only just past halfway through. But with every passing kilometre, Auriol was getting closer and closer to bringing the SEAT Cordoba onto the podium. Every minute that passed would lead him one step closer to turning La Decepción into La Sorpresa. But then, on stage 12, it finally happened. Didier Auriol crossed the last flying finish. He was 3rd. He had done it. The fragile Cordoba was on the podium, at the toughest rally on the calendar. This would be the second last time SEAT would score points in the WRC. Gardemeister's 6th place in the Rally of Australia would be the last. SEAT would enter 5 rounds in 2002, with a driver lineup consisting of 2 drivers nobody has ever heard of. But the team would only finish 1 rally in that year's championship, when Marc Blazquez finished 16th in the Rally of Portugal. Gwyndaf Evans was the only SEAT driver that anyone had actually heard of in the 2002 season. He entered just 1 round, his home event, Rally GB, where he would retire. That marked the end of the SEAT Cordoba World Rally Car's time in the World Championship. It quickly ended up in national championships, as there was no privateer interest on a World Championship level. Only one SEAT Cordoba is still actively rallying to this day. 6 were written off, with a remaining 15 gathering dust somewhere, perhaps in museums. So, where does this put Cordoba on the Super Scoreboard? In terms of cool factor, it's a really cool car. It has a cool name, it has a cool history, and of course, all rally cars are cool. And the fact that it was the first world rally car that Sebastian Loeb drove, as well as being driven by Didier Auriol, Marcus Grönholm, Harry Rovanperä, and Tony Gardemeister, that ups the cool factor massively. It's not quite the Octavia, but the Cordoba gets a 9 out of 10. The Cordoba is a beautiful rally car. The blue, yellow and red livery is striking and bold. The lines and proportions are exactly as they should be, and of course, it's a coupe. All of that makes it absolutely no surprise that this car is getting a 10 out of 10. The car did get quite a few podiums. The fact that the Volkswagen Group split their development budget across 2 brands who did not share any parts in the WRC, with the 2 cars using different platforms and 2 different engines, you get the feeling they've missed a trick of at least sharing an engine. The Octavia was always too big, but the Cordoba was the perfect size, and it did occasionally show some pace, but nothing spectacular. The Cordoba WRC gets a 4 out of 10 for potential. The Cordoba tried an innovative, massive rear wing on the pre-Evo version. It didn't work out for them, but they were definitely trying things. But they weren't really doing anything game-changing. The Cordoba gets a 5 out of 10 for innovation. The expectations for the Cordoba WRC were quite high. After the incredible performance of the Ibiza kit car, the Cordoba had big boots to fill when stepping into the top class. The Cordoba certainly had a gap between expectations and reality. It gets a 7 out of 10. The Cordoba had multiple memorable performances against the odds. The 3 podiums were prime examples, but they weren't the only ones. Gardemeister's 4th in Monte Carlo was another. The underwhelming Cordoba was often fighting higher on the leaderboard than it should have been. It gets a 9 out of 10. This puts the SEAT Cordoba to second on the Super Scoreboard. Make sure to subscribe to see the next documentary on the Cadillac North Star LMP.